Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ann Fennell, and I'm president-elect for the California Music Educators Association, and this is Sip and Share with CMEA, Shelter in Place and or SIP in Place. Today is actually our final professional development series after 8 weeks of providing information for all of you, and we are very fortunate today to have a wonderful panel of guests. Next, please. And there we go. Today we're talking about advocacy and imagine the possibilities. We've got Lynn Tuttle, Armalyn Cindy Marten, Justin Wallace, and Mackie Spradley. And I promise I will introduce each of those to you as we go throughout the presentation. Thanks, Chad. Our opening slides are taken from NAfME, just so that you know that these webinars are recorded and are archived. During this time of unprecedented need for virtual and online instructional materials, the first consideration for use must be student safety. To that end, NAfME recommends that children under the age to 13 have adult permission before accessing any online resource, and that students and or families do not provide any identifying information to gain access to the resource, free or paid. Thank you. NAfME also advocates for equitable access to instruction, as does California Music Educators Association. As we curate materials to help members implement online learning, we recognize that effective online instruction in any subject requires universal access to learning devices and internet services, professional learning opportunities and time for educators to design online learning environments, tasks, and assessments, opportunities for students to learn how to succeed with online instruction, and an appropriate learning management system. We know there are many resources on both sites on NAfME.org and calmusiced.com. Please check both for our weekly updates. We have got special folders with the latest and greatest, and please also check these throughout the summer because we know there is research being done that will affect all of us for our instruction in the fall. Next, please. And now we get to begin our session with Lynn Tuttle, who's the NAfME Director of Public Policy and Professional Development. Lynn Tuttle is Director of Public Policy Research and Professional Development for the National Association for Music Education. Her duties include supporting music educators and state leaders in the areas of standards, assessment, research, teacher evaluation, and the interconnection of federal and state policy. She also manages the production of NAfME's 6 publications for the field. She's the primary author of NAfME's ESSA resources. She holds a Bachelor of Music Education and Flute Performance from Peabody Conservatory, a Bachelor and Master of Arts degrees in the Humanities and World History from Johns Hopkins University, and an MBA from W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University. She continues to teach, study, and perform as a flutist and singer, and is the mother of 2 young musicians, Peterson and Landon, and from what we've heard, one is learning to drive this summer. So
yes.
Our best to you, Lynn, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Anne, and thanks, California Music Educators, for having me on this afternoon. So I just want to give you this brief sort of overview, and then I'll quickly go through some of the work we've been doing. As a policy team and as your national association, here are the ways that we've been thinking about how we can support you as you support students in music both this spring and into getting ready for next school year. So we've been thinking, as you all have, about health and safety, how to advocate as best we can for music and arts education, especially as we head back to school. What does funding look like for education, particularly since we know our states are going to be having budget deficits based on the recession caused by the pandemic? And then what will school look like? What will music education look like? What should it look like? What possibly could it look like as we return to school in the fall? So next slide. So a few pieces we've done on sort of the health and safety, and we've been very fortunate to work with many amazing partners this spring on this work. First, we put out some instrument hygiene guidance. If you've been looking at this, it really, and Anne, you recall when we were starting to work on this, really thinking about this in terms of what do we do as instruments get returned to school, or as students sort of check back in those instruments with us? What do we need to know about how long the virus can stay on the different materials that instruments are made from? And what should we think about in terms of, basic, not professional, not super fancy, but basic cleaning guidance. And so again, we were very fortunate to partner with NAM Foundation and NAfHS, which is the National Federation of High School State Associations, to create this guidance. Next slide. We're also very lucky to have many partners. I think we're over 80, 85 partners right now looking at how COVID-19 could spread in music classrooms, and specifically this idea of sort of aerosol distribution. What happens when we are singing? What happens when we're playing our wind instruments? And what could that mean in terms of health and safety for students and educators in this era of COVID-19. And so thanks to the College Band Directors National Association and again NAfHS, they are leading this study, and our colleagues at NAM Foundation are the main supporters. So NAfME and many, many others are putting in funds. The study is going to look at these areas of what we do as we make music and what might be able to mitigate the spread of aerosol spray and particles from us as we perform, in case that would help us mitigate spread of the disease in our classrooms. So not only we're looking to see what happens when we play, I'm a flutist, what would happen when I play flute, but what might happen if I'm playing flute in a mask? What would happen if I'm playing flute and there's plexiglass in front of me? What might be the mitigating things we can do to make our classrooms safe for our students and for ourselves as educators? This work gets underway next week at the University of Colorado. The study will be replicated at University of Maryland College Park starting in July. And we should have the first round of study results hopefully by the end of this month, if not the very beginning of next month, to then share out with all of you. Next slide. So that's kind of on the health and safety side. On the advocacy side, we were able to finish up a brochure we've been working on since January on music education and social emotional learning. And as you know, I'm sure you are all missing your students, and they are missing you and their connection to you and their connection to their colleagues and the collective work that we do when we make music together. And so the power that we bring for our students right now in terms of their social emotional connection to school, to music, to us as educators is so profound, and certainly something that I miss in terms of the ensembles that I'm no longer able to participate in. So at this moment in time. So we're kind of highlighting what those connections are, some of the research behind that, and ways to talk about and support music education as one of the vehicles for social emotional learning for our students. So again, this is available for you to use in your conversations with administrators, state legislators, however you need to do it to talk about the importance of music education at this moment in time. And next slide. From this brochure then came, and where we saw us heading in the fall, especially with the pending recession, we really wanted to lean into our colleagues and our partners in the arts and in the educational sphere to come up with a statement to really talk about the importance of music and arts education at this moment in time for our kids. And what you see on the screen is the outcome of those conversations in under 3.5 weeks. And I've been doing national work pulling together herding cats from multiple organizations for a good 2 decades here. I've never done anything this quickly before that I think is of this level of value. In 3 weeks, we got the statement completed. We have more than 50 organizations that signed on immediately. We have another 48 that have signed on in the week and a half since we issued this statement. So it's really got a lot of momentum. And not only are these arts organizations that have signed on to the statement, but also education organizations like the National Education Association, the National Association of Secondary School Principals, the National Association of Elementary School Principals. So showing sort of collective support for arts education. And again, this is a resource for you to take back, share with your administrators, share with your colleagues, have available for you as you make the case for music and arts education this fall in your school system. Next slide. So we've been talking a bit, or I've been talking a bit about the sort of I don't know, do we still call it a pending recession? It feels like we're in the recession. Maybe we'll say the recession in which we find ourselves right now. And knowing that there are state education budgets that are going to be at risk because many states have to have, by their constitutions, a balanced budget ready for July 1. And we know that they are having limited personal income tax revenue, sales tax revenue, all of those types of revenue streams have been drying up since March. And so wanting to urge Congress to help with their stimulus dollars to backfill those state education budgets. And many thanks to you on the call and our colleagues across the nation. We put this call out, I want to say about 4 weeks ago. Since then, we've had more than 11,000 letters go to Congress, which is extraordinary. When we do calls to action, if we consider it great if we get 300 letters or 400 letters. This time you all have really stepped up. We have 11,000 letters out. We need even more. The House has taken action. The Senate has dug in their heels and don't want to do anything yet. We need them to move. And the sooner we get them to move, the better, the sooner funds get to flow and states get to know what dollars will be available for them to backfill their budget gaps, which then would impact downstream district level budgets. So I know this is impacting you all in California. So please participate, share, get others to participate as well. You've got the link there on the slide. Next slide. Excuse me. And then if you keep going down that same Action Center web link, you'll find here, I'm going to take some water, an additional place of action you can take, and I think about 2,000 to 3,000 people have done this already, where you can try and make a difference around the homework gap. And homework gap is the term that's been used to describe students who don't have internet access on Capitol Hill for about 2 decades. So we're trying to help fill that gap, even though it's not really homework gap. Like literally right now, it's the educational gap. These are the kids who haven't been able to access any of the instruction that you might be providing online at this moment in time. And it's always been an issue, but it's like front and center an issue, an equity issue right now. And so we've been working with an extraordinary coalition of education organizations trying to make a difference with this on Capitol Hill. It is making a difference. There's been some funds in the House, the next House stimulus bill that address this issue. We have a couple of separate bills sitting both in the House and Senate addressing this issue, again, because of the advocacy work that you all have been doing. So again, if you haven't participated, please do. If you have, forward on to other friends and colleagues to participate. And next slide. And finally, the final piece that isn't quite ready for prime time yet, though we're getting close, is sort of returning to school and thinking about, in essence, guidelines, not requirements, but ways to think about what it might be like to return to school in the fall. And we're trying to reflect on what we're seeing from the states in terms of reopening guidelines. Most of the ones that I've seen have like from plan A to plan Z, right? Like all back in school like normal. Some of us back in school, some of us may be home, all online, and all these variations in between. So what does that mean for music education? What does that mean for us in terms of what social distancing might look like? What should we be thinking about in terms of safety and healthy practice until we get the research done, and then we'll update it once that research comes out. So we're trying to come up and imagine what these different possibilities might be. And again, it's meant to be a starting off place. It's not the be all end all, but it's meant to help generate ideas and thinking so that you have some suggested ways to begin your planning for the return to school in the fall. So if you've got any suggestions or ideas for us, please share. We're in the process right now, so always feel free to reach out if you have ideas or suggestions to share for that, please do. And next slide. And just a reminder that we are here as your public policy staff. Our job is to serve you. So if you have advocacy needs, suggestions, ideas of things that we should be doing at the national levels or ways that we can support you in the great work you're doing in the state of California or in your local district, please reach out. We are here to serve. Thank you again, Anne and Armalyn, for having me on, and I hope this was useful information.
Thank you so much, Lynn. We are very grateful for the National Association leading the way and helping everyone find their place throughout this situation. Thank you. Next slide, please. And now we have Armalyn De La O, who is the president of the California Music Educators Association. She is also currently the director of the RIMS California Arts Project site of the California Arts Project at CSU San Bernardino, and the coordinator for visual and performing arts for the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools Office. Ms. De La Oa has a bachelor's degree in music ed and a master's degree in education administration. She taught music at the elementary, middle levels, and currently a lecturer for the music department at CSU San Bernardino. Armalyn also served as the chair of the California Arts Standards Advisory Committee, one of 10 national writers for the National Core Arts Standards in Music, and served as the band chair of the NAfME Library of Congress project. Welcome, Armalyn. Share all that you know.
All right, thank you. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that CMEA has been doing for close to 10 years now in terms of advocacy for music education. Just as some information, we have an advocacy team, which consists of the 3 presidents and our advocate, Martha Zaragoza Diaz. We meet every week to discuss current legislation that might affect music and arts education, to share data and information we receive from sources, we strategize, we think about ways in which that might impact music education and arts education, and ways that we can make sure that music and arts education is at the forefront of people's thinking. During this time, we focused much on the need for equity of educational funding. And with that as our main idea, we began to work on letters that we sent to our governor, Gavin Newsom, to our Senate President, Tony Atkins, and to our Assembly Speaker, Anthony Rendon, with the idea that it is important to make decisions about subject areas with equity in mind. Next slide. Continuing that same push, we began to think about all the other decision makers out there that are thinking about making financial decisions and educational decisions for how we return to school. So we continue to focus our letters on people like our state superintendent, Tony Thurman, our school board president, Linda Darling-Hammond, our school board association president, Ms. Cruz Gonzalez, our county superintendent's educational service president, Ted Alejandre, Association of School Administrators, Linda Kaminsky, and Parent-Teacher Association, Seal Jaffe. We included the California's first partner, Jennifer Seibel Newsom, because she's been very active alongside our governor in working on the needs of education in our state. So we wanted to make sure that they understood what we were thinking about when we talk about equity, and that we know that there will be some reductions. We know it's going to be some hard times, as Lynn has talked about on the national level, but we just wanted to keep in their thinking that all subject areas are important for all students to learn. And so besides doing that, we share those same letters with our partners, our California art education partners, our California dance educators, and our California educators of theater, so that we have a collective voice when we're reaching out to our students. These letters, if you haven't seen them, are posted on our CMEA website, on our advocacy page, for our members to also be able to utilize as they move forward, and we share them with our Stand Up for Music coalition partners. Every chance we get, we want to remind our leaders that the importance of music and arts education for our students during this time. Next slide. Another piece of advocacy that has been very much on the forefront of our thinking is what's happened with independent consultants in California. Many of you know AB 5 was passed, and as of January 1, 2020, went into effect with the idea of independent consultants needing to be employees. We also know that that has put a hardship on many of our organizations, and not just our music education organizations, but many of our nonprofit music associations and art associations. So our main goal has been to work with Gonzalez, who is the sponsor, Senator Gonzalez, who's the sponsor of AB 1850, which is a cleanup bill to AB 5 to create some waivers and some amendments that might help. Our main focus is around the idea of that independent contractors for student programs. Our guest conductors, our clinicians, our adjudicators, our accompanists that serve many of our events that we hold statewide, wanting to make sure that they understand that that not only we don't have the means for them to be our employees, but that they have full-time jobs. They work already as teachers and educators, and they're in their own employment venues. And so we want to make sure that we can continue to offer services to students with the people who are volunteering or spending time working with us. So we also attended and provided verbal written feedback. John Byrne spoke for us at the AB 1850 hearing. And at that same point, we also, prior to that, we met with Senator Gonzalez's office and her staff to voice our concerns. We met with the consultant to the Assembly Labor and Employee Committee, and we were able to meet with the chair of the committee and the members of his staff. We let them know that we oppose, if not amended, this AB 1850 bill. And you may have seen ads that are coming on right now that are also opposing the AB 1850. And so we know that there is a groundswell happening. So we want to be positive, and we want to make sure that we are supporting the intent of AB 5 as it moves forward. So our next step, next slide, is to provide some draft proposed language to amend AB 1850. And so this is the language we've been working on. It's not necessarily ready to go yet, but it's drafted with the intent to send it to Senator Gonzalez in another letter saying, here are some considerations and in terms of how our adjudicators, guest conductors, and clinicians and accompanists work within student performances, festivals, and competitions. Making sure that we are governed by Borrello, and these areas are demonstrated through that lens. Next slide. Other things that we've been doing, many of you are on our Facebook page or our Twitter, Instagram, and we have social media presence in campaigns. We pushed out the governor's roadmap to recovery, which allowed you to give input on what the fall could look like, what school could look like, what arts education, all subject areas. So hopefully some of you had the opportunity to participate in that. We are also pushing out the information that Lynn was talking about from NAfME regarding the $200+ billion for educational funding. We created a CMEA statement on music and social emotional learning to participate and place that on our state superintendent of public instruction. He has a wiki forum. That forum ends today on June 5th. If you haven't had a chance, it's going to be in the chat, and Chad will put that up. You can still go in and add your voice to why it's important for music to be part of social emotional learning and arts education for all students. Recently, we posted a CMEA statement on ending systematic racism and injustice as a result of the things that have been happening in our country. Very dear to our hearts, and we want to make sure that we're standing with all our communities. Next slide. So if you're not following us, we ask that you please do. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, our website, all of those. And then we anticipate that we will be having a Stand Up for Arts Education Day with our partner organizations, dance, theater, and visual art in March 2021. So if you haven't been to Sacramento yet to meet with your legislators on that day, we invite you to join us so that we can have a collective voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Armalyn. And I also want to give a shout out right now to Chad Dillinger and Trish Adams, because they are keeping the website up to date. Anytime we get new information or new resources, we're making sure that that is up for everyone. And so it's a fluid place for everyone to find themselves and the needs for their individual schools. And that's really important for us in regards to communication. And also reminding you to please check back throughout the summer as information arises. I believe we are ready to move on to Cindy Marten, who just got on. I have the privilege of introducing Cindy Marten, the Superintendent of San Diego Unified School District. She is deeply committed to creating educational conditions and opportunities that enable all children to become actively literate, contributing and participating members of a democratic society, and to make a positive difference in the world. Her 25 years as an educator include teaching elementary school, as well as serving as a school-wide literacy specialist. As the district superintendent, Marten leads the district team and community with a singular focus on student success. She believes that there are no when it comes to providing children with the very best conditions that will enable them to become confident, successful learners who can achieve their dreams. She works tirelessly with holders in San Diego Unified to implement Vision 2020, creating quality schools in every neighborhood throughout the district. Cindy values and knows the power of arts education at all ages and supports this in the school district. And she believes in the power of quality education, including the arts, for all students. Cindy Marten, welcome to CMEA Advocacy Friday SIP seminar.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Or I can't see everybody, but I'm glad to be able to be here and join with everybody. What a great opportunity. I just love our team here in San Diego Unified. And for us, this is not like there's a pandemic and we need to figure out how to get an arts program up and running. This is core to our mission. As in California, we're the second largest district in the state, and thanks to Russ and Ann and the work that we've done here, this is who we are. This defines us. And this quote I really love. I've been using it all over the place, and it's resonating with our city and with our stakeholders. We say science will get us out of this, but art will get us through this. And what we're seeing in San Diego and what we're seeing about how our kids are connecting to their learning in this distance format is being able to have a way for kids to find something that they can connect to that's meaningful. That happens in brick and mortar, and it's happening even more now than it ever did before. So San Diego Unified, we worked and collaborated with the largest districts in the state, including LAUSD, that's Los Angeles Unified, is the first biggest district in the state, we're the second. And when we made our decision to close our schools on March 13th, we didn't have guidance from the state. The governor didn't order us closed. The local health officials didn't order us closed, but we knew that we needed to. And by the time we announced it on March 13th, the rest of the districts in San Diego County, and then shortly after that, the rest of the state decided to do that. But we partnered with LAUSD and on the closure of our schools, and we've stayed partnered with them all the way through. And we're advocating at the state level and at the federal level because, frankly, public education's on the line. And when the first CARES Act got passed at the federal level, and they focused on the airlines and businesses and all of the things that mattered, that was great. But we have the next one is the HEROES Act, and we have to advocate for adequate funding in order to be able to open our schools in the fall and to open responsibly. We have to be able to open, and we have to be able to open responsibly in order to get this economy started. So we've had a significant level of advocacy at the state level. Our governor came out in California in May with his what's called the May Revise, and he said that we were going to be cutting schools by 10%. And we've spent $30 million to transition to distance learning, just to transition. We've distributed 50,000 Chromebooks. We've done 14,000 hours of professional development. We have 2 million Zoom minutes a day for students engaging in their distance learning. And we've served 2 million meals as of today. We will have served 2 million meals. We're doing breakfast and lunch and supper and weekend meals. So all of that, there's a cost to it. So in our advocacy, we're helping people understand the costs of this distance learning, and then the cost to open. When you think about social distancing and protective equipment and the kinds of things that'll be needed, our job is to educate at the state and federal level, educate and advocate for what's really needed to responsibly open. So we're going to keep having that. Sorry about the background noise. I have some sirens outside, but we're going to keep advocating at the state and national level. If any of you are interested in our advocacy, Russ can provide you the letters that we've written. We see a good sign at the state level that they're heading in the right direction. The cut might not be as much as we thought, but it's important that we keep moving. So even though we've had to engage, we've engaged an amazing number of students in our distance learning, over 95% are participating, it will never replace learning in person and learning in brick and mortar. Our kids really, truly need that. So we say that a cut to education funding right now is a recipe for more distance and less learning. And so we just can't have that. So we're fighting for it. So we know that our students have chosen whether or not to connect with us for learning. They've been making choices to engage in the arts and music, and that art and music engagement is what's keeping kids with us. We know that the relationships that our students have with their music teachers have been developed over several years. Many times it's up to 4 years. And that music teacher often serves as a student's deepest adult connection, and kids need that connection now more than ever. They need somebody that's like a life vest to hold on to in this storm when there's so much that's unknown and unpredicted that we don't know what's going to happen. What are the things that we can hold on to? And very often it's our music teachers who serve as something that our students can connect to. Music ends up being just a safe place for students to be themselves, to express themselves, to be accepted. It helps with their social, emotional well-being. And we know that music and the arts are more important now than ever. This is not the time to cut anything that has to do with the arts. It's a time to invest, and invest strongly. Because like I said on the first slide, science will get us out of this, but it's art that will get us through it. And we need to protect and keep the arts well funded because we need it. And in times of collapse, when you look at history and you look at long-term history, one of my favorite authors is a woman named Margaret Wheatley, and she talks about, one of her books is Leadership in the New Science, and her most recent book is Who We Choose to Be. And she studies patterns of collapse as societies, like long-term civilizations rise and falls in a 1,000-year period. And during a pattern of collapse, when things are falling and big institutions and big structures are no longer working, you know what arises are the creative souls. And when it's like a warrior is needed during a time of collapse, and we are experiencing a time of collapse. And what Margaret talks about over years of history studying, during a time of collapse, what emerges is is a warrior. And the warrior emerges to protect what needs to be protected. And what needs to be protected right now is the human spirit. And the human spirit is protected through the arts and through the way we have human connections to one another. It's a tsunami. If you just think about the analogy of a tsunami, it's coming, the water recedes, and this huge wave is going to come and swallow up the village. And we are so passionate in arts education. We're going to stand on that beach and we're going to say, no, please don't come and swallow up this beautiful little village. This is a wonderful village. Leave these poor people alone. They're doing good work. But you can't stand on the beach and tell the tsunami not to come, because it's coming. So what you have to do is you have to gather folks together, get to the highest ground, and remember that people want to be creative, people want to be kind, people want to be in community together, and that's what we have. We can't stop this pandemic. It is what it is. But what we can do is take exquisite care of one another and allow the creative spirit to emerge. And you all are the ones that show us how to do that. You all are the ones that get us together in this community and show us the way to care for one another, to lift one another up, to show that we're okay. Our children are looking around the city and everything they know and love is closed. The schools closed down, the churches closed down, most of the stores and the parks and everything is closed, and it's very confusing to our children. But we were able to say, we're open. Schools are open. We may not be physically open, but our hearts and minds are open. And I got to say, I'm so proud of San Diego Unified's visual and performing arts team, because they were one of the first departments to just put up tremendous resources for families to just jump in and say, if you're looking for something to do, keep the arts alive during this, because the arts are what will knit us together. It will make us strong, it will make us whole, and the creative spirit will emerge. And this isn't just my opinion. This is, Margaret Wheatley talks about, this is what happens in history. During a pattern of collapse, it's the creative folks that come out, and they are part of what helps us see what the new day is going to be. So I don't know, I'm super passionate. I'm totally off my talking points. I'm sorry, Russ. You go to the next slide, I think, or maybe that's the last one. I just wanted to just tell everybody that this is everything that matters to us, and we've got to continue to figure out the stories and the things that our kids have created. I hope that we're able to share some of the things that we've seen our students come up with during this time, because I think our kids now that are experiencing this, that are in school, we wanted to say, as soon as schools closed, we wanted to say, this year is not lost. We're going to make learning matter. We're going to get distance learning up and running. We passed out 50,000 Chromebook computers. We lit up the city. We closed the digital divide, and we put up resources and said, let's get to it. And that's what we're going to do for our opening as well. When we open the schools on August 31st is when we return. We're going to open, and we're going to open strong. And we have to stay within the health guidelines, and we have to make sure that the budget comes through. And that's what we're fighting for, because you know what? You guys are worth fighting for. Every bit of advocacy that I do at the state and federal level is to protect the beauty that you all have created for our students, and it's worth protecting. So I'm all in, and I couldn't be more honored to do this work alongside true professionals like Ann and Russ and our entire team. And I don't know who else is on the call, but I love you all.
Cindy Marten, this is an example when you have a superintendent who is human-centered and knows the power of relationships. And I can barely talk right now. Thank you for the power of your words, for supporting the arts. And Russ, thank you so much for creating that environment for all students as well in the district. We are very fortunate with the two of you. And again, Cindy, I'm just going to let you know that in the chat, there are a few. Here is an example, is this human rocks was one of the chat messages, and also that, as another person had said, that we do not often hear this from superintendents, if at all, and very grateful for you to articulate those words and know the power of what we bring. Thank you. Thank you for being on with us today.
I love
And
you.
now oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just said I love you all. Big hearts.
Thank you, thank you, right back at you. And now we move on to Justin Wallace. So this is the beauty of this webinar. Armalyn had a beautiful idea about connecting national to large school district to small school districts, because California has a massive demographic divide, and I'm going to say a geographic divide, from very small schools to very large districts, as you've heard from Cindy. And now I could tell you a little bit about Justin. Justin is a superintendent and principal of the Fieldbrook School District in Arcata, California. A dozen years ago, he quit his job in the private sector to pursue a career in education. He was a classroom teacher for 10 years and has been an administrator for the past 5 years, now serving as both superintendent and principal of the school district, which has got to be a daunting task at this time. He has worked only in small rural school settings where his heart resides, and rumor has it, played a mean clarinet in his elementary school program when he was in 5th grade. Justin, looking forward to this information. Thank you so much for being with us.
Got to unmute myself. I don't know how many times I've said that over the last 10 weeks. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the fact that I'm able to give a perspective of a small district. We are a district that serves kindergarten through 8th grade, and we have 125 students. So to give you a little perspective. What's really nice to say is that what Ms. Madsen had said in her presentation mimics that of a small school as well. We're seeing heightened social emotional stresses on our families, on our students, and you know, through our surveys, conversations, I'm lucky that I can have, you know, intimate conversations with those families. I get to drop in on my students' Zoom sessions, and you know, we're seeing the trauma, but we're also seeing the light. We have, you know, many examples of the arts being a focal point for our students. It's the highlight of their week. It's what the parents say they look for. Anytime there's multiple Zoom sessions, parents are informing us that they're choosing the music piece. That is what they're engaging with. And I think that's really important for us to realize, is that music teachers, they're able to reach the students in a way that the classroom setting is not. I just want to, say a big thank you to all the music educators out there, because it is important. We have students that don't engage in the academic curriculum as well, but that, for whatever reason, music is something that they are, truly loving and they look forward to on a regular basis. I think there's something to be said also in this virtual world, that music is also a way for students to get moving and active. And I think we tend to forget about that piece. My own daughter, I have 4 children as well, and they go to 3 different school districts. And they are their favorite classes are their music, the time they get to engage, they get to dance and move around and interact with their peers in a fun setting. And I think that's something that as educators, we're trying to figure out how to do that with, you know, with our math classes and with our writing and reading, but it's something that's just intuitive in the music program. And so I think that's something that we really need to strive to continue to, you know, focus on and enrich, because it is something, it's a niche that the arts have that the rest of the curriculum doesn't have in this virtual format. You know, I wanted to talk about the funding piece because it is not good for us in California. We are looking at a 10% deficit, you know, or being deferrals of close to 10% for the year. And, you know, for some districts, it's millions and millions. My district, it's hundreds of thousands. And that is, you know, it's a daunting hill for us to overcome. I do want to say that I've already started reaching out, and I think other districts should be doing the same, reaching out to their education foundations, booster clubs, private foundations for different ways in which they can get guarantees or verbal acknowledgement that the arts are important and that those different community organizations and foundations will help support the arts. I think that's a great way to go about it. You know, in California, we had a really big grant opportunity for districts through MTSS, which was multi-tiered systems of support. And we got an extension for to redo our budgets. And that is a piece to be looking for is, you know, where are they giving us that wiggle room to move dollars around in our schools so that we can help support these programs that are really, truly vital that may not have other funding mechanisms. So I think that's something that, you know, all superintendents should be looking at, and, you know, music teachers should be advocating to say, where else can we find those funds? Because, you know, it's hard to say, but, you know, quite honestly, arts are one of the first areas that get cut, and they are looked at to where can we trim some of those spending. And it's not something that that anyone wants to do. But I think there are a lot of ways in which we can help support, you know, the arts through different organizations. You know, I'm lucky to have an amazing music teacher at my site, Miss Mack, and she, you know, as you know, she's just phenomenal. We're lucky that we're strings instruments, so we don't have too much spit flying around. But I do, you know, she's done a wonderful job with not only the in-class instruction, but taking on the distance learning models, finding different ways to interact with the students and to actually create collaborative music as well online. And so we'll be using those as fundamental bases for next year's planning so that we can decide how we're going to go about, you know, meeting all of the needs of our students through the arts for next year, you know, because, you know, we do not know what next year looks like. You know, every week to week is a different story for us. Hopefully we'll get a little more clarity after Monday from our governor. I believe we're getting some new guidelines that'll be coming out on that date. And we'll be able to plan appropriately to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students, because I think it really is important that we not forget that all of our students count, and, you know, not all of them have the same needs, but the arts are definitely something that we need to keep alive for our students, and we need to, you know, continue to support that. You know, I you know, appreciate you letting me have some time here, and I hope I didn't waste anyone's time, but you know, thank you very much.
Justin, thank you so much. You've said it, keeping the arts alive and meeting the needs of all students. That's so valuable for us to remember. And also for us to just to know that there are ways to find money and keep leaning into that, especially at this time. Thank you very much. And from bringing your perspective from your school and your school district. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And now we have Spradley. Before I even begin with her, I'm gonna let you know that we will have time for Q&A. So if you have any questions for anyone, please feel free to jump in and put it in the chat, and we will monitor that as well. Mackie Spradley is the National Association for Music Education president-elect, soon to be president in the next couple weeks. With over 25 years of service in music education in urban public schools, she is also the Visual and Performing Arts Coordinator, Secondary Choral and General Music Studies of Dallas Independent School District. Mackie has also been a board member of the Texas Music Educators Conference for 6 years. She received the Bachelor of Music and Voice from the University of North Texas and a Master of Arts in Vocal Pedagogy from Texas Women's University, and her Doctorate of Philosophy from the University of North Texas in the College of Education. She continues to share her expertise throughout the United States and abroad, and is a published author with research interests in music teacher effectiveness, critical discourse, cultural responsive teaching, social justice in music education, and critical theory. Mackie continues to focus her work and efforts on issues related to equity in music education programs and improving music teacher effectiveness. Mackie, we welcome you. Thank you so much for being on this call today regarding advocacy. Please share.
Thank you so much, Anne. And thank you for CMEA for the invite. I really am valuing this time with you. And the speakers before have just been phenomenal. So I hope I have a little bit to add to that. When I think about the current situation that we are in, not only the COVID-19, but also the protests that we have seen go on across the nation and other countries. I feel that we are in a crisis. We are in a place where there's so much pressure on us, as even if we're not teaching, there's so much pressure on us, it is difficult to even concentrate and do the work during the day. But I read today this little sentence and I thought, and I apologize for not having the author, but just know that the author is not me. And the sentence says, almost every crisis contains within itself the seeds of success, and as well, the roots of failure. So when you think about it, it's more of, what are we going to do while we're in this crisis? And as music educators, whether we are interacting with our students every day or we're looking forward to doing it in the near future, they are experiencing this crisis just like we are. And I think about the trauma that anyone feels generally when they go through a crisis. Some scream, some cry, some pull out their hair, some lose their voice totally. So when we go back to school, it's going to be all of those and more in our classes and as our colleagues. As music educators, we have such a great opportunity to use all of these seeds to springboard our students into success. One of the first ways we can do that is by empowering them to speak, giving them a voice, allowing them to cry out, allowing them to scream, allowing them to create, allowing them the power to say, I am hurting, I need hope, I need healing, someone help me, you don't understand, why is this happening? Why hasn't someone done something before? All of those voices will be in your classroom. And what do you say to those voices? How do you impact them? How do you influence them to be creative in their responses? So this gives you an opportunity to open the door for composition, for learning a new instrument, for creating a new ensemble. Those are the ways that we can make a huge impact as we go into the future. That means that we're also advocating for our students. In many instances, as we have heard today, racism, social injustice. Many of these things are systemic. They're in our organizations, they're in our institutions, they're established. And no matter how many times you throw a rock at the wall, very little is made, very little difference is made. So voices have been silenced. So this gives you an opportunity to advocate for students, to advocate for them to have a voice, to advocate for you to have a voice as a music educator. Because sometimes, as you well know, music is silent as well in our school districts. I applaud Ms. Marten as the superintendent that is fighting for her students and how passionately she expressed the importance of music for all of the students in her school district. And I applaud Mr. Wallace for having the same opinion. But as you know, some do not. So to have a voice, to be empowered to speak out, and know that when we speak out, we may not be embraced with affection. We may not be embraced with a hug. We may not be embraced at all, but we have to have the power. We have to be encouraged. We have to take a stand. We cannot stand on the sidewalk and watch our students crumble because they may no longer have a voice. We have to advocate for them. We have to stand up for the weak, and we have to encourage all others to be strong. I thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. As NAfME continues in their work to fight, to stand up, to speak up for those that have been cast aside and not thought about very often, we continue to stress that we are for inclusive classrooms. We are for students to have access to music. We believe in equitable educational opportunities for all students. And we believe that all students should have the opportunity to have a wonderful experience in music education. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Mackie. You are modeling for all of us to use our voice, to stand up for what we know is right. And we model this for our students, and they become the next voices of our culture. And that is invaluable to all of us. Now we move on to the next slide that we believe becomes our statement. Is that correct, gentlemen? Chris?
No.
Chris, my goodness. Chad, thank you.
And opening it for questions.
Thank you. Okay. So now is the time for questions. I apologize for that error. Now is the time for questions. If you have anything you want to ask regarding funding, we do have Tushar Swain here also from NAfME, along with Lynn. They can jump in. Any specific questions you might have for your school district, where we can lean in to find funds. While those are popping into the box, I want to reflect back on also what Mackie had said about, for us to be able to have those conversations. Mackie, maybe you can even talk about this for a second longer, about holding that space. It's such a valuable, important time. We have music that holds the space for us, but also when we hold the space for our students to share their thoughts, the value of that and what we do.
If you think about someone that has gone through so many things, they can no longer express it. I think about being in a fight. I remember when I was in middle school, I was bullied a lot. And this little girl she just bullied me and bullied me. And then I have to admit, it got to the day that she pushed me in the corner in a locker, in the lockers. And I came out swinging, fighting. I eventually had to stand up for myself. I had to speak for myself. and students that have gone through so much trauma, have gone through loss, grief, that have gone through so many things and seen so many different things, that space to come out with a raging voice is so powerful. It empowers them. It empowers them to speak out, not to be violent, but to speak out. I was violent, yes, but I was tired of being bullied. So, what I'm saying is, it is crucial for us as music educators to create a space in which students can speak out. But as a music educator, we cannot tell them how to speak, because then that is policing their speech. So we have to be ready for what they're going to say. We have to be ready for what that creation is going to be.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautifully said. We do have a question from Kirk Clegg, and he states there have been some posts about the California legislature agreeing to fund the education shortfall for the coming year. Is this true? And if so, how will that affect us in our localities?
Do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, yes.
Please do.
I can tell you what I know. The May revise definitely was talking about a 10% cut, and I summarize it as a 10% cut. It's a cut to LCFF and a cut to the COLA, but it just came out to be 10%. And we did hear progress. We did hear some good news this week that the Senate and the Assembly came to an agreement. They have all the details of that are coming out. They're actually coming out right now, but it looks like it's heading back in the right direction. So how it would affect your actual district, it's hard to say. What they've been counting on, there's the CARES Act money, and then there's the state money. But if your districts had already planned on the cut based on the May revise, we're looking like we're in better shape than what the May revise says, but we're still not in good shape. It still is a very serious budget deficit. And even if the state does everything that we've asked them to do, which they're heading in that direction, it will not be enough to completely close the budget deficits that we're going to be seeing because of the significant losses, which is why the rest of our attention is focused on the HEROES Act at the federal level. The signal that we're getting today and in the last couple of days is the right direction. That gives us enough to start without some maybe massive cuts at the beginning, but is it enough to get us through the year? No, it's going to be enough to get us started while we put all of our attention at the federal level. And so I'm busy calling superintendents in all of the, we'll just say we've chosen some key states, and I'm calling the big city superintendents in some of those key states to make sure that we're educating at the federal level on what's needed here. So there's more to come, but I said that we needed to see a big signal from the state before June 15th budget adoption, and we got that signal this week that at least they're listening. Everything that we advocated for, San Diego Unified got together with LA, Sac City, San Francisco, Oakland, and Long Beach, the 6 largest districts in the state, and put our advocacy letter forth. And we just kept saying over and over again, we need more, not less, that we need more funding, not less funding. So how that interprets at your district, I'm not quite sure what kinds of plans people have made in each district about anticipating what the cuts would be. I'm hopeful it is heading in the right direction, but we are nowhere out of the woods, and there's a lot of runway left to go still.
Thank you, Cindy. And it makes me think that we have to continue, as Mackie said, to continue to share our voice and make sure that we are contacting our reps and that we are actually in that positive leaning in phase where we're saying we need this. And that even if summer is starting, our voice can just begin to crescendo into this. It's very important. Thank you.
So we wanted to share, if you haven't seen this statement, we wanted to make sure that you were able to see it. We did post this week, and we wanted to just say that CMEA stands with communities and organizations that are working towards peacefully ending systemic racism and injustice. We lift our voices in solidarity with those working to create a more just and equitable society. The arts have always found ways to bring people together, to sing, to play music, to tell stories that need to be told, to help communities cope, and most importantly, to create dialogue that aids in healing. We know now more than ever, we need safe spaces for people to create, to share, to learn from each other, and to know they matter. We want everyone to know we see you, we hear you, we will not remain silent.
Thank you, Armalyn. Everyone matter, all of our students matter, and this of our students is key. We are very grateful to Mackie, Spradley, Justin, Wallace, Cindy, Marten, Armalyn De La O, and Lynn Tuttle as being the guest to our final CMEA webinar for the spring, the COVID-19 spring. And we are thankful for your wisdom, your wide reach of knowledge that supports students in every corner of our state, and very grateful for all of your knowledge and understanding of what is possible. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to CMEA. This is what we are here for. We are happy to take your questions. This video will be posted on the CASMIC website, the Cal Music Ed resources as well. And we will be able to, you'll be able to share that. We've had that in the chat as to whether or not this is shareable, and it absolutely will be. And again, reach out, continue to ask questions, continue to ask for what you need from your reps, and push into them and let them know the value of a quality education in California. With this, we thank you very much. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Trish, for your continued support on the tech side of this. And we wish you a wonderfully safe summer. Time to detox a little bit from the screen, maybe. Connect with your family, make some music, share some love and support. Yes, thank you very much. And this webinar series is officially concluded. Thank you, honored guests. Thank you very much.
Thanks, team.